If this investigation finds proof of illegal activity on either side to such a level that it could have changed the outcome of the election, then I would wholeheartedly support a new election to all voters have confidence in the results. As we move toward resolution, I look forward to participating in a transparent, factual, and fair process.
The Republican candidate at the center of the election scandal in North Carolina says he would wholeheartedly support a new election if the investigation shows proof of voter fraud. The District 9 congressional race has been roiled by allegations that Republican Mark Harris's campaign may have benefited from a fraudulent collection of mail-in ballots. Joining us now is the Democratic contender in that disputed race, Dan McCready. Thanks very much for being on the show this morning. Casey Hunt is with us, and she's got the first question. Casey?
Good to see you, sir. You withdrew your concession in this race late last week. I'm wondering what your plans look like in the event that you do have to run another special election here for this seat, and also if you've gotten any indication that that's the direction that the Board of Elections may be heading.
Well, we're gearing up right now in case we do have a special election. This is in the hands of the North Carolina State Board of Elections that's launched an investigation. A week or so ago, they made a really unprecedented move they decided in a 9-0 bipartisan decision to refuse to certify the results of this election based on the fraud and the irregularities and the illegal activity that are there. So we're gearing up to be in this fight. Ultimately, this is in the decision of the Board of Elections.
Let's go to Elise Jordan. Elise, I mean, in this race, the data is fairly indisputable. It's staggering how some of these numbers pile up in different areas.
And that's what I want to ask Dan about. So you, with this race, and can you kind of talk us through your thought process as you decided to say, like, I'm not going to concede this?
You know, I was in Disney World a couple weeks ago with my 4 little kids and my wife, Laura. We kind of thought this election was over after having run a very long campaign, more than about a year and a half long campaign. We were as surprised as anyone to see the Board of Elections refuse to certify these results. And then day by day, more evidence roll in, more affidavits roll in about actual fraud and criminal activity. The amazing thing is that my opponent, Mark Harris, went out and hired a known criminal under investigation for absentee ballot fraud to manage his absentee ballot program. This was someone who is a shady character in Bladen County, someone who the incumbent Congressman Robert Pittenger sat down with for a few minutes and then decided not to hire because he was so shady. This goes to the top of Mark Harris's campaign, yet he's, other than that statement that you read, written by his lawyers, he has refused to answer a single question about anything that's happened in the last week.
So, Dan, I have a question for you. You know, obviously North Carolina has been the site of a huge partisan fight over voter rules and restrictions. Excuse me. And I wonder, after watching this play out, if you think that the party that has been pushing these restrictions, has any responsibility to figure out what went wrong here. And second, I wonder if you think that there should be a new law or a new kind of proof to prevent this kind of fraud in the future in North Carolina.
Well, the responsibility lies with Mark Harris. You know, this went to the top of his campaign, and it's not acceptable to the people of North Carolina who had their votes taken from them. You know, your vote is your voice. People had that taken from them, and they're really demanding that he end his silence and that he answer questions about what happened. This is not a partisan thing. This is not about Republicans and Democrats. It's not even about one election. Really, this is about our fundamental American rights. I started my career overseas, where I served in the Marine Corps. You know, I could never have imagined that I would come back home to North Carolina and see our very right to vote under attack. Our very democracy under attack. So this is much bigger than one election. This really goes to what our country's all about, what our democracy is all about. And that's why it's so important that Mark Harris end his silence.
So, Dan, for people around the country who are watching this, please explain how the alleged fraud worked.
Well, my opponent, Mark Harris, hired a criminal who was under investigation for absentee ballot fraud in Bladen County to run his absentee ballot program. This man's name was McCrae Dallas. McCrae Dallas hired people to go to voters' doors to tamper with their ballots. It appears that in many cases, people's ballots may have been thrown in the trash can. Some people had ballots come to their doors that they did not even request. There's an affidavit saying that that this operation may have extended over multiple counties, that McCrae Dallas may have had 80 people working for him. There's also an affidavit suggesting that even the Bladen County Board of Elections may have leaked early vote information to people who weren't supposed to see it. That's information that is strategic to a campaign that determines or is an important factor in how a campaign spends resources, all that sort of thing. So, it really doesn't look good, and it goes to the very top of Mark Harris's campaign.
Dan McCready, thank you very much for being on the show. We'll be following the story. Thank you.
Good to be
Still
on
ahead,
with you.
Jared Kushner is reportedly doing double duty, advising his father-in-law and the Saudi crown prince, even after the Khashoggi murder?
Well, not just even
that can't be. That would be...
Not just even after the Khashoggi murder, about the Khashoggi murder and how to get past the Khashoggi murder.
That's...
Wow.
We'll explain it all, or at least try, ahead on Morning Joe.
Morning Joe is sponsored by the Lincoln Wish List Sales Event.
I want to be with you. Yes, I do. Everywhere you go, I want to be with you.
The greatest wish of all is one that brings us together. The Lincoln Wish List event is here. Sign and drive off in a new Lincoln with 0 down.